Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Dynaway Dialogues. We're very honored to have Mark Rigdon here. Mark is founder and CEO of M. Rigdon Consulting. And thank you for joining us today, Mark. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Super. Well, Mark, just wanted to get you on the podcast here and learn a little bit about you. Tell us about your background and about your company.
Okay, so I've been in management consulting now for 25 years, various different companies. But in the last probably 15 years, I've really focused on maintenance and reliability and in turnarounds and shutdowns and helping my clients do those better.
Wonderful, wonderful. What type of clients do you have? What industries are you most prominent
So
in?
mostly petrochemical and oil and gas in the last like 10 years, but also aerospace. I've done stuff in car manufacturing, in fertilizer manufacturing. So all over the board, all kinds of different companies and industries. And what I've found in doing all that is the basics, the principles of how you do maintenance well are the same no matter what you're making. So for me, it's easy to take all the good things that I've seen, learned over the years, and apply them to whatever industry I'm helping my clients with.
It's funny you said that. I work with a lot of customers also, and the first thing out of their mouths always, when we're talking about software, of course, is we're totally unique. We do it this way, and to some extent that's true. But like you said, the principles still remain the same. Solid maintenance is solid maintenance. World class maintenance is world class maintenance. So
Yes.
that's interesting. Yeah, Mark, how is your 24 years of experience? In petrochemical and other industries that we just talked about, how have they changed or shaped your approach to project management?
So I would say what it's really solidified in me is that the stakeholder involvement at all levels of an industry, to be able to have the people who work in the business that I'm working with clearly see that what they're doing isn't what they want to do, isn't working for them, isn't successful for them, and that they need to change something. And that they all clearly see that something needs to change. They might not agree on what needs to change, but that something needs to change. To have that buy-in at every single level of the industry, unless you do that, having folks move in a project stepped manner towards a better process or implementing that better process just doesn't work because they don't see that they need to. And I've learned over the years, no matter what you're doing, no matter what the project is, if the people going through it, the people wanting to make that change, clearly see that they have to and they must move, then it's you're not going to win. That they'll do the things you're asking them to do while you're asking them to do it, and then it'll fade away. It'll be just another flavor of the month kind of thing, and the organization won't change. They won't see the need to do that. So I always do what's called a brown paper of the process before I start. Here's what you do. Here's all the documents. Here's the CMMS, the Dynaway system, if that's what you're using. Here's all the different things that you do to run your process. You plan your work, you assign your work, you execute it, you report on what you did, and then you figure out, oops, did I like that, or do I need to do something different? So they have that set up, whether they know it or not. They have it set up. So I always take all their stuff and set it up that way, and then have people walk through, what do you think of this section of it? What do you do with that document? Does it fulfill what you need? Is it giving you is there something wrong with it? Is there you have meetings that you go to. Should you be at that meeting? Is it a good meeting, or is it just a waste of your time? And so we talk about all of those things in that work order management system, and at all the different levels, right? Because there's a guy sitting in finance who needs the guy on the floor who just fixed that machine to put certain things in the system so that he can do his job.
Yeah.
And they've never talked to each other, and they never provide each other with the information they need. And they go, yeah, but he doesn't do that. And the other guy goes, but I don't know why I have to do that. Right. So you have all those conversations, and then, well, it's not easy to make that change. Now, at least they see, oh, what I do affects you. What I do isn't what you need. Okay, how do we work on that? What do we do to change that piece, this piece, the other piece? And I would say the other two pieces of project management that really stand out for me are scope management. You must have buy-in. This is the project. There will be things that come up. Those go over there on the side. And what often happens from a project manager's point of view is you see that it's going to negatively affect your project, so you want to take it on. You want to look like you're solving a problem for the client. But when you do that, you don't do what you were hired to do well, and you don't do that well either. So you don't do anybody any favors. You just spread yourself too thin. Because if you do it right, you set up your project to cover the scope and only the scope. So you got to have that at the beginning. This is what we're going to work on, and things will come up. And when they do, I'll let you know, and we'll talk about what you want to do. And then that comes up to the second part is risk management. These things are a risk to our project. Let's put them on the board. Now, we can talk about I can help you or you can do it yourself, but clearly understand if we don't fix these, what we're doing will not be successful. So what do you want to do? So you have those adult conversations throughout the entire project so that if it does go sideways, there's no question, oops, oh, we didn't know that. Oh, yes, you did. Every week we talk about this in the update meeting, and we clearly discussed these things were not in scope, but these things will wreck our project. And we've done everything we needed to in the project, but we didn't handle those. So we can do it now. I'll bring an extra team in, or you guys start working on it. Here's what I think you should do. We'll have those discussions, but you cannot say the project wasn't successful because we didn't handle the risks to the project that weren't part of the scope. So tying all that together really makes any project much more likely to be successful. People will talk about, I got to concentrate on budget and cost. Yes, but if you do those things and you set the project up right, you're going to get your budget right. You're going to get your duration right. It's going to happen the way you want to. Those are the things that derail the project. People don't buy in, so they don't help you. People don't understand the scope, so they're asking you to do stuff outside, or even something vital that's in the scope they don't want you to do because it's difficult or hard. And they don't understand the risks and how it will derail the project. So I found that those three things really, I try to hammer on those. Well, there's other principles, but those are the big three that I always try and concentrate on to make a project successful.
Yeah. Well, going along with I guess your first point there, what do you do when you run up in a challenging project management situation where, somebody's just not buying in, one particular person or group? How do you rein them in or get them to buy in? What's been successful?
So I'm always looking for what's in it for them. The overall piece of the overall project may not have anything to do, according to them and where their worldview is, with them. Mm-hmm. But something in it that you need them to do will be important to them. And I'll give you, for instance, like the maintenance guys on the floor will often complain about having to record where they spend their time, what issues that they're having, because they'll say, I know what I'm doing, just leave me alone, let me do my job, you don't have to micromanage me. Okay, I get that, guys, but when something comes up during the day that isn't part of what you should be doing, let's say you had to go hunt for a part because it wasn't in the kit you were given, and you spend 2.5 hours doing that. Does that not aggravate you? Does that not? And they're like, well, but it happens so often. It's just part of what we do. But wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't? Yeah, that'd be great. Or you walk out there and the piece of equipment you want to work on isn't ready yet. Operations, for whatever reason, they had to run late last night or whatever, right? Nobody got the memo and they didn't turn the thing off and lock it out for you. And now you're standing there for an hour and a half while they do that. Those kinds of things. If you say, hey, I spent X amount of time on it, and I only should have spent half of that. Boss, can you help me? Here's the things that delayed me. When you tell your boss that, it gives him the ammunition to fight back all the things that you don't want to have happen during the day. So no, I'm not micromanaging you. What I'm trying to do is set the system up so that you have a framework to talk about the issues you run into every day. Right now, you don't. Right now, it's just things that happen to you, and you're given enough time, let's say 8 hours to do a 4-hour job, that other 4 hours, nobody cares what happens. You wander around the plant trying to do your best work, but you didn't need to do that. You could have done more. And often the places I work, they said, well, none of the equipment works because we can't get the work done. What if I gave you back that 4 hours to do something value added somewhere else? Maybe we don't get it all back. What if you had 2 more hours? What would you do with that? To make sure the equipment runs well so that you're not running around with your hair on fire, which is not fun for anybody. That's what we're trying to do. So back to what I've asked you, please write down where you spent your time, what issues you had, and how you do it. So it's a basic kind of thing, but it's essential to get it right? And record what happened to that piece of equipment in the system so that your reliability engineers can use that information later on to fix that permanently, right? If you don't do that too, okay, now you've wasted a good opportunity to supply the right information to the right people to do their job.
Yeah. What I hear often is, well, I do tell my manager that I spent 4 hours on this or 2 hours on that, but
Right.
it's kind of the ether, right? You tell somebody, you're not documenting what's happening, and that's the evidence that a manager can use to make change.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from the manager side, what I often find, and this is universal every industry I've been in, is that the managers were really good at what they did. Let's say they were the best little pipe fitter in the outfit.
Mm-hmm.
On Friday, they were told, great, you're now the supervisor of the pipe fitters in plant. And on Saturday and Sunday, nothing changed. And then suddenly they come to work on Monday and they're the boss. Nobody's told them how to be the boss. Nobody's educated them in how do you do this well? How do you make sure that the guys who you were just on the crew with now can respect you enough to listen to what you have to say and allow you to help them to do their job better? There's no framework for that. So frontline supervision is almost never taught how to do that job well. And it is key. I spend a lot of time doing formal classroom training. What does a good meeting look like? What does change management look like? What does a good work order management system look like? And what's your role to do those things, to assign work, to follow up on work, to capture the issues, to correct people when they're not doing something right in the right way, to take that information and be able to create actions to solve problems for them, because that's the root of your job. Keep them safe, get the barriers out of the way, and make sure that they can do their job. And that's never taught at that level, or quite frankly, all the way up, right? Because then if you figure out some of the things and you look good as a supervisor, then now you're the manager, but you still don't have the proper wherewithal to manage people well. And I think it's a failure across all businesses and industries.
So I know you do a lot of training and leadership training and coaching. Is that kind of your philosophy on that aspect? Is that what you do with approaching coaching for a diverse set of skill sets?
Yes. So yeah, you can have the best processes and procedures. You can have the guys putting the numbers in the right place. You can have your PM program all together. But the glue that holds all that together is that frontline supervisor, that leadership behaviors that say, we're going to do more of the right things at the right time. And all those things that we don't want to be doing, we're going to figure out how to stop doing those. And have those conversations and solve those problems long-term. Do root cause solutions to all those. True root cause solutions, not let's get in a room and agree that we're going to fix that thing next, which is not root cause, right? So you teach them that as well. So that's really, to me, the glue, the leadership of it. I've had clients often tell me that, yeah, it'd be great, but nobody holds anybody responsible here. So you're never going to change anything. And that's really the key, is not to punish people. That's not, those people that don't want to work, you'll root those out. 99% of people who come to work want to do a good job. They come to work to do a good job. There's a few that don't, and fine, deal with them. This is the folks that come to work and want to do a good job, but don't really understand what that is. The expectations weren't set right for them. So they're doing the best they can in the situation with little or no direction. And they often do things they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
As management, what we do is line that out. Here's exactly what I want. I'm going to come see if you were able to do that. And if you weren't, I'm going to help you do that. And then I'm going to record how much time we lost, so that if it's something we need to talk about as a wider group to solve that, I have that information to say, I lost this much time on these things. We need to work on that as management. Here are those actions. And it sets that whole thing up. And that leadership is what does it, right? So you have to have that together. Otherwise, no matter what processes and procedures you have, they're not going to work. Go back to what we said at the beginning. They're pretty universal, the best practices of what we need to do for maintenance. I could pick out, and I've written them or seen them in probably 50 different companies, the how we do maintenance book, and it would be almost word for word 80% the same everywhere I've ever been. Maybe 75, maybe 90, somewhere in there, but it's the same. There's some, because of what they do or because of whatever, some regulation, there's a flavor of difference, but it's the same. So do we know how to do maintenance well? Absolutely. It's that frontline leadership that allows us to follow those processes and procedures more often, that really make the difference between a well-run organization and one that struggles to do the basics.
Yeah. So true. So tell me, let's say that you do manage to drive change in the organization. How do you make sure that that's sustainable for the organization and that it's not going to, revert to default?
Yes. So it's not just classroom training. I also do a lot of coaching with all levels of the organization to make sure that so we start with the frontline supervisors, right? We've said, hey, you need to go, here's your day, here's what it looks like. You need to go and find out what the guys are doing on a regular basis. So suit up, walk out there with them, let them have the conversation the way you've taught them to do, and then afterwards coach them and take notes. Here's what I saw. Here are the things you might do a little differently. Let's try that again. And so it's over and over and over again, having those conversations in the field to make sure that it becomes part of their DNA. And I'll say that the difference between successful projects where things truly change and don't, it's that piece of it. It's being given the time to solidify that, which each of the people involved. And then it's also the meetings that we have, right? So you should have a weekly performance meeting at a minimum, but definitely a weekly performance meeting. How did maintenance operate this week? How was maintenance this week? So, and you teach all the folks what's in that meeting? What's your role in that meeting? Who's chairing the meeting? What are we doing here? And it's not just, oh, that wasn't good, we'll see you next week. No, that wasn't good. Here's why it wasn't good. Here's what I'm doing about it. Here's what I need others to do for me to solve that. We're going to write that down. Who's taking that on? Okay, Sam, how long do you think it'll take? Blah, blah, blah. And we follow up on that every week to make sure that those things are getting taken care of. It's not just, oh, that's a bummer, we didn't get there. No, which is typical of the meetings you see, performance meetings, is oops, oh well. No, that's not acceptable. Here's how we do this. Why did we not do well? And it goes back to that frontline supervisor knowing on a daily basis how he feels it now. He knew it was a big problem that we were looking for parts all over the place. Now he knows, hey, it's 20 hours a week. That's half a guy I lost. or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
He's invested in getting that fixed now because he sees the number and he can tie it to something.
Yeah.
And he's been set up, hey, you're over budget, you're over budget, you're over budget. Hey, fix that problem. You got half a guy back for a year. That's a huge part of your budget. Let's fix that. What do we need to do? Oh, okay. And so the glue to it is setting that continuous improvement in the DNA of the organization. And then the manager who should be chairing that, maintenance and or operations, depending on the place, I'd really rather operations run it because maintenance is a service organization. Maintenance should be saying, here's how I did for you this week. That should be the tenor of the conversation. And some of that is, here's what I tried to do this week, but you didn't allow me to. You didn't give me that equipment. You were late on this. Your guys took forever to lock out that, whatever. So that's part of the conversation, and it needs to be an adult conversation. It's not, hey, you guys now. Over the week, here's what happened, right? I lost time here, here, and here. Could you please set your guys up to be more successful with that next week? Sure. Mm-hmm. Or they didn't know this was coming because they didn't look at the schedule or whatever, right? So there's a lot of that, but that's the key to it. And then often the next level up in management, I have come to those meetings every once in a while, and I set them up with some questions. Hey, we're doing really good on these things. Could you ask them about this? Because every time I do, it's a little shady and they don't think it's important. Do you think it's important? Oh yeah, that they should be doing. Okay. Could you come next time and ask these questions? Great. So they ask those questions and all of a sudden the guys go, hey, Mark, can you help us understand what to do there? And you're also teaching him, you set the expectation, you're coaching him on what he should do when he comes to that meeting. Right. He doesn't know it. And I found as you go up the way, you want to less say, well, I'm coaching you on how to run that meeting. No, they don't want to hear that. They know what they're doing. They're brilliant, but you do. Right. And when you do that and the group is understanding it's important up the way to get this right, they'll do it. And then it'll change. Then it will change. But you need time, just like making a diamond. You need time and pressure.
Right.
And it's not push. It's subtle pressure over time to move in the right direction to make a difference.
Yeah.
To change that DNA.
Yeah. People ultimately want to, they want to improve on what's important for their management and their company. But sometimes I think they have a little skewed perception of what is important. Management only cares about this. They don't really care about that. So I don't care about that. But if you can relay to them in a subtle, ongoing, consistent way, and then you can measure that, because I think you can only improve things if you can measure it, then you have a recipe, in my opinion, that you can work with. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And when you come to measurements, often the people will be like, geez, every time we do this, we get beat up because things aren't right. So, okay. That may be the case in the past. Well, what I will tell you, the way I will talk about it and the way I will help your organization talk about it is whatever the outcome is not what's important. Eventually it will be, but right now it's not. Why didn't we get there? Knowing that and having a plan to execute on making that better next time. If that's the way you use the KPIs, then there's no threat for anybody in that who's doing a good job. Right? If you're not, okay, sorry for you. But again, we're very few in that category. But if we use them to say, this is truly what affected me, here's what I'm going to do to fix it, then the KPIs become something you want to talk about on a regular, ongoing basis. Let's say one of the KPIs we're going to use is schedule attainment. And the first few weeks out of the box, we're at 30%. I don't expect anybody to scream and yell and kick things around the room. That's not acceptable, and we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is say, ooh, wow, that's not where we want to be. Where we want to be is up here at 70, 80%. Not 100%, because that's not an attainable number, so let's forget about that. So you set that, right? Let's set that at reality. What happened that we couldn't get there? Oh, well, this, and this. Okay, what can we do to fix those top three things that didn't allow us to make that one? And you can't measure folks on things they can't change, they can't affect, right? So Um, on schedule attainment, it's very effectable. Either you gave the guys the equipment to work on, they worked on it and got it fixed, or they didn't. Those are things the guys on the sharp end can have an effect on.
Mm-hmm.
I had at one point one of my managers telling me that at a refinery, I ought to talk about maintenance dollars per barrel produced at the frontline level in the organization. And I said, that's great for the maintenance manager. The guys in the sharp end, they have no idea how what they want to do today affects that number. They can't tie it up in their head. It makes no difference. So it has to be a measurement that they can clearly see, makes a difference, and drives it in the right direction. Are all the hours that I work today put somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I log into the right work orders to put the numbers in the right place? I can affect that. So that's a KPI I can personally affect to make sure it all goes in the right buckets, right?
Yeah.
All the downtime that I had today, I can say, ooh, I was here for 12 hours. I only worked on stuff for 6, and here's the other hours that I lost and where they go. That I can do. I can report out on that very cleanly. So those kinds of things on the sharp end, you make sure that the KPI is something they can affect, and then they will. They'll see that it's I need to do better with that because I'm not giving the right information up the way.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That's too far away from them to a myriad of other things can affect how much is produced. So their little piece of it doesn't really correlate in their head. If they're the only ones doing things right and 6 other people are screwing it up down the line, that doesn't, right. Then they're working for nothing. They're not affecting anything, and that's frustrating.
They're not affecting anything. Yeah. That's frustrating. Yeah. So it can't be something that they can't directly affect.
Yeah,
negatively.
But if
or
they
positive.
can change, if they can change the number of work orders they close in a day, and they see that going up month over month, they're successful.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's when they can truly affect.
Hey, we've talked kind of abstractly a little bit. Can you give us an example of a customer you've worked with where it was a real challenging situation, but because of bringing you in and how you kind of affected that and made it a better situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked for a refinery doing their major turnarounds. What we were trying to do is look at the whole process from 3 years out to how you plan the work at that point, how you set up the scope and risk management and all the things you do so that when you execute, it comes off well. And then you do a good closeout at the other end. And so that all the information that you gathered goes in the right place. So you do a lessons learned and recycle, rinse and repeat. So that, like maintenance, that process is very well known. What you should do. I've written those handbooks for several different places, and they are same. One of the gentlemen that I worked with at a pretty major refinery, when we walked in the door, his attitude from the very beginning was, "Here come another bunch of young punks who think they know better than me how to do this." And so the challenge was, what can we do to help him do what he's doing better? And make him believe it was all his idea, right? And that's not always easy, right? He was brilliant. He'd been doing this for a long time, but in turnarounds, if you're only over by a little bit and long by a little bit, you're very successful. Almost all of them, 95% of them, don't reach target. They go over in budget. They go over because they're so complex and so hard to do and so poorly planned for. So we started working with them on one that was about to execute right away. And we got in there about 10 weeks before, and they would have started planning this thing 2 years earlier. So there's not a whole lot we can do to affect that outcome that close in. So we looked at a couple of things. First was the frontline management during the execution of it, right? We did some what we call day in the life of studies of guys doing work in the field and what issues they had, what we saw their downtime was. So we looked at those and said, okay, as simple as it is, there's a lot of time around getting started in the morning. So the permits and all that stuff, going to and coming from breaks. There's a huge leak out of time there. And all of that spoke to us of frontline management not being in the right place at the right time and understanding what they should do. So we talked about, okay, what would that look like, and how would we help you change some of that right away and get better at it. And we said there's probably about a 15-20% improvement in people doing what they should be doing, turning a wrench, if we do just those things right. So he was, of course, skeptical. And in all of that, we also changed the couple of meetings that we were having to be performative, like we talked about. So we were talking about, schedule attainment. We're talking about, making sure that the right hours are in the right buckets, all those kinds of things, so we could see what was going on more clearly. And so we started coaching people on that. We had classroom training, and then I had a team of about 5 guys, and we worked with the contractors as well as the internal people to do that, because it's the same issue on the contract side. The guys who are managing that don't know how to manage either. So we had them all in the room together. So it was clear, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we need you to do with your people. We're going to follow up in these manners. So we had all those conversations. And one of the things was there was a night shift to day shift handover, right? So you work all day, it's 12-hour shifts, right? And you take kind of a break in the middle to allow like things to happen, but you still have your management there for the 12 hours. And one of the main things that came out of that is the communication between night shift and day shift about what we were doing and what needed to continue to happen was wholly inadequate, right? They just take notes and throw them on a desk and never really talk to each other, just walk past each other, say, hey, how you doing, Sam, and go home. Or go to work, either way. So nope, in the field, face-to-face, at the jobs you're going to be working on, that's where that conversation needs to take place. And we all agreed that that was the right thing to do. Even this gentleman who didn't want us there and didn't think we could help said, yeah, that's what they should be doing. So, well, that's not what they are doing. He goes, oh, yeah, they are. Go, okay. So that first morning of the first day, right, we're out there. There's 5 or 6 of us out there, and not a person in sight. It's empty. It's dead. You could almost hear crickets if they were allowed to live on a refinery. You would hear
right.
So they made the mistake of giving me a radio. So I called on the radio. I said, hey, Mike, we're out here in the field. Was there a meeting or something that happened that I'm unaware of? I don't see anybody out here. Silence. There's not a crack on the radio at all. And I know he's there. And he goes, hold on. And here come people trickling out from all the other places that they should have been. And so we went around to all those conversations and started coaching on them. And the next day, they weren't there again. Hey, Mike. By the 4th day, they were out there in the field. They were having that conversation. And I can't put an exact number on it, but what it did for us is he saw that something that simple made a huge difference in the way the work went. And he never allowed it again for them not to have that conversation in the field. And that was successful. We then went on to have a larger program where we started on the next one they were doing at the very beginning and went all the way through to close out with them. And he was still contentious on a bunch of things, again, because he knows everything. You don't know anything. Very contentious all the way through. So we went through that. It was successful. They typically went over by 25% in budget, and they went over 5 to 6 days in duration, which is hugely expensive. We got that one down to about 10%, and they only went 2 days over. So it was a huge success.
Yeah.
I didn't see Mike again for 2 years. I saw him at a different client, and we were doing an assessment for that client on how well prepared are you to do a turnaround. And they brought him in to look at the scope piece, technically to review that for them while we were looking at the processes and procedures. How are you doing? And so we do an end of the day meeting on the 2nd day. He was in the room. We talked to him, said hi, all that kind of stuff. The 2nd day, I'm talking about this leadership training and coaching, how essential it is in the field to do that, to make sure it all comes off well. And the guys are arguing, they'll never do that. These guys know what they're doing, all the things you hear, right?
Yeah.
We're about 15 minutes into the conversation, and Mike goes, hey, Mark, can I say something? And I was nervous as all heck. I'm like, okay, don't know, because I don't know what he's internalized, right? I really have no idea. And as if I scripted a commercial, he talked about how his group picked those things up and were very successful in implementing the follow-up, the assigning, the schedule compliance, all the things that we taught him. He talked about it for about 10 minutes. And afterwards, the people in the room looked back at me and said, okay, so how do we do that?
Yeah.
It was brilliant. So it took a guy from, I don't want you anywhere near me, to preaching from the choir, right? It was awesome. And so very, very successful. I still speak to Mike to this day. I talk to him, and he's a good guy. So that was a very good one.
That's wonderful. All right. Love to hear that. Well, thanks for sharing, Mark. Let's transition a little bit. We're looking forward to Dynaway CONNECT. You're a speaker there. We're excited. It's, as we sit here today, it's coming up pretty fast on us. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to share, what our listeners can expect if they're attending the conference.
So what I'll talk about is how you behave in the real world so that your Dynaway system and what you're doing there provides you the information you need to manage your business better, right? So talk about a work order management system. How do you set up your PMs? How do you gather the notifications that say this is the corrective work I want to work on? How do you plan that work? How do you schedule that work? How do you execute it well? What do you need to do once you're finished? When you close out, what data do you have to collect? So that system, that work order management system, provides you with the data you need to better run your maintenance department. It will deliver what you need if you put the right data in. What it doesn't do is tell you how do you work in the real world to do that. And that's what I'll talk about. How do we tie those together? My daily activities in the real world to run my maintenance department as it should be run in a world-class organization are these things, and that will affect what you do and how it's collected in your system so that those two things work together to support an excellent management system.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
That's the tie-in that I'm trying to make with the presentation that I'll give.
Yeah, there's a couple of components, to world-class maintenance. There's systems, but people are probably the biggest part of that.
Absolutely. What I find with clients is that they're looking for a solution, and they think that by putting in a new system, IT system of whatever flavor, right, that will solve the problem. And what I always talk about is you got to do it in the reverse, right? You have to understand what your processes and procedures are, and then look at a system and set it up and modify it to fit how you run maintenance in the real world. So otherwise it's going to be a constant battle with not getting things in the right place, not getting the right information, because it's not a shared vision of my maintenance flows this way. This is the process and procedures, and it delivers to everybody what they need. The operations guys get what they need. The reliability guys get what they need. The finance guys get what they need. My managers get what they need to manage the business better. If you don't do it in the real world the right way, it doesn't matter what system you have, it's not going to work. And so tying that together is what I'll be doing in my presentation.
Yeah, totally agree. Can't wait to listen. Last question, Mark. In general, this is kind of Dynaway's first attempt at this kind of a knowledge sharing conference. What's been your opinion of that type of environment or conference in the past? Do you find that, especially maybe from your client's point of view, do they get value out of that? Is it successful? What's your opinion on that, working with so many customers?
So I'll say one of the conferences I've spoken at on several occasions is AFPM, the American Fuel and Petrochemical American Fuel Manufacturing Association. They have a huge conference every year, and what the AFPM is the legal arm kind of all the petrochemical and refinery organizations. They work with these guys to fend off lawsuits and changes in regulations that will negatively affect the petrochemical industry. And they do an annual conference. And I've spoken at it a few times. The turnaround stuff we talked about, I presented that there, and routine maintenance I presented there at their annual meeting. And what tends to happen that I see is that when those folks get in the room together and are able to talk about best practices and sharing, that knowledge share is much more valuable than when they see it themselves and because they believe they're special and all that kind of stuff. When they're talking to each other and say, "Oh, I do it like this," that knowledge share is essential to making the whole conference go better. So if these folks are obviously interested in Dynaway, they have it, right? They're using it. And when they start to see, that asset management software, they're using it, and they hear how somebody else did something or worked on something, and I'd like to do that. That's very valuable on the sharp end to the owners, right? That knowledge share, when you can facilitate that, it puts a lot more value in the Dynaway AMS product, because they'll get more out of it. Yeah. You can tell them from here's what it'll do from an IT perspective, and they go, okay, yeah. But their guy who's also a planner or a frontline supervisor at a different place says, "Hey, I do it like this," and they go, "Oh, I didn't know it could do that," and you've been telling them that for years, right? So those kinds of it's very valuable to have those conversations on the sharp end.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, fantastic stuff, Mark. As we wrap up this edition of Dynaway Dialogues, I just want to thank everybody for listening. Please follow us on whatever platform you're listening, like or subscribe or follow. And Mark, thanks for joining us. We can't wait to see you at the conference, and look forward to seeing you in person along with everybody out there who's coming.
Good speaking with you.